Do you want to present yourself?
Yes, that's a good start.
Yeah.
My name is Ymir. I'm from Iceland. Started Good Tip now, almost a year and a half ago. So very early days of Good Tip.
Yeah.
And I've been digging deeper into the backend of Good Tip ever since, basically.
Yeah, deeper and deeper.
Deeper and
Yeah.
deeper,
Yeah.
all the way to infrastructure provisioning and our different AI pipelines and shit. So,
Nice.
are we cursing? Yeah, I'm cursing.
Yeah, we can curse. I think, yeah.
He said it wasn't like a Microsoft video, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what else do I do? I post weekly pictures of different sort of animated, image-generated rat faces on Slack.
Weekly Rottefjes.
The weekly Rottefjes, that's me.
My name is Jacob Steinn, or I'm called just Steinn at the office. I am the tech lead, which is just a title, but I started working at Steinn as a developer, and then found out that there was this transcription thing that came out, Whisper, from OpenAI, and made like a little prototype of something that could maybe help, and that is now maybe help, and that is now Good Tape. So what I do is kind of a lot of I'm like an octopus doing a little bit of everything, but also just learning a lot from Ymir. I'm also born in Iceland, so that's a funny coincidence. But I grew up in Denmark. Yeah. But I mean, given the start where I'm normally a web developer that came into this AI sphere where I didn't know anything about like all the terms and like what is inference, what is tensors and all of that stuff. Getting someone like Ymir on the team has really helped, so that I don't feel both alone in this, and then there's also just the fact that somebody who has like the knack and the experience with these things is huge.
That's I'm humbled. No, I think it's true what you say. You approach development very much from the world of web, and I actually somehow came into all of this what we're doing from an infrastructure sort of AI first, or at least that's where my interest lied to begin with in all of this. It's actually true. We're sort of approaching Good Tape from two different directions.
Yeah, but it's also the cool thing of you coming to the team was that you have done a lot of work otherwise before you started with Good Tape. And one of the things that we really saw was something about like how you co-located servers within the EU, which is something that we really strive towards. Can you speak more about like how it is, like what limitations it puts on a company to say like, oh, we only want to have EU companies and also only EU servers? Like it's such a
it's a really tricky challenge to sort of solve the right way in the sort of cloud ecosystem. If you speak of that as a whole, I mean, there's a cloud service everywhere in the world somehow, and I mean, they are cheaper where they are also sort of less, what can you say, sovereign, at least for us as a European company to be using them. So that's always been sort of I just entered the sort of the whole cloud like debate from the standpoint of that, like as a European company with a majority of our customers European, at least we should be able to sort of take somewhat a European first standpoint to where we store our data, where we process our data, and all in between.
We also see it with a lot of our customers, especially in the beginning of Good Tape, where we would get emails from our Taiwanese customers going like, hey, thank you so much for good tape, so that we feel like our transcription data is stored safely outside of China, or like because there is of course the conflict between being a Taiwanese trying to be independent and mainland China, where you don't want your things to be surveilled.
Yeah.
And I think like not only are we following the black and white like kind of regulations, but we are also being able to help others secure their data by following the rules that have just been set by EU.
Yeah, exactly. GDPR is there for a reason, like, and it's often hard to sort of have one more set of rules that you have to abide by in your work.
Yeah.
But it's so fundamental to the service we provide to be absolutely 100% along with all of these rules that also, you know, keep on changing and keep on sort of being refined and so on by different clauses to this and that, you know, part of the document, and it can get hectic sometimes. But it's very a core of the service we want to provide to our users, both European and non-European. I mean,
yeah,
we like to look at it as that sort of the GDPR rules that have been set by Europe are sort of somewhat, you know, on the top of the sort of other policies you have in this world.
Yeah.
As you say with our Taiwanese customers, for them, they don't have to necessarily store the data local to them, because they would much rather have it just in a cloud ecosystem that has a better rule set applied to it, basically.
Yeah, I think also for each company that we choose to partner up with, they will of course be what is known as a sub-processor. And there is sometimes a huge trade-off of choosing a sub-processor which is not a US-owned but a EU-owned company, because oftentimes it is the US-owned companies that have all the traction, that have all the features. That means that we have to build things around them.
Yeah.
So for example, in the beginning of Good Tape, we didn't know, like, we made a lot of rules that would remove things after a certain time. Like we would clean up and still do like all these front page transcriptions, like where I could see a lot of other companies that aren't data privacy and like security with others that don't have that mindset would just want to like gobble up all the information.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't keep the audio files of other transcriptions until we knew exactly how we wanted to store them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what is the best solution that both is good for the platform so that it feels good, but also how do we store it in a safe manner? Because there is like, we have 3 parts. Good Tape is kind of 3 parts, right? So there's like the vault, the web, and then our machinery.
Machinery.
Yeah.
The thing that transcribes, the thing that sort of stores your data, and the thing that presents those things, you could say. Now, it's a good point you brought up, because we sort of had it as a bias in our work in the beginning that we won't store anything unless we know how exactly we want to store it.
Yeah.
And how to store it right, so to say. And I think that served us pretty well, because it sort of made us very mindful of what data we were storing when, and that's still how we develop and go about things. It's to sort of take to an absolute minimum the data we choose to collect, also because users also want us to collect data. They want us to collect their transcription and keep their transcription so they can see it, right?
Yeah.
So there's always a trade-off to sort of not storing data for the user experience, of course. But then there are so many companies that have this whole other approach to it and keep all the data that the users want them to keep and all the data that the users don't want them to keep, right? And I think we're always trying to never cross that line of keeping data about our users that they don't want us to keep for their experience.
And that's very much the point. Like Good Tape was working and got traction before we even added like audio playback and stuff like that. Like we wanted the product to work great as it is, And then also once you have the option to actually store your audio, the platform will work just as fine if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like so the fact that also when you delete it, it's gone.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
Like it's gone in each of the three, like.
Yeah, which surprisingly is not always the case.
No.
Deleted data is not always deleted data. I can't stress that enough. That it's somehow become a thing that you can believe that you're deleting something without the data actually being gone from where it's stored.
Yeah, I mean,
Still,
it's such a normal thing to when you go and delete something from the internet. It's often just marked as delete. Like so, the item that you have made, it would just get like, this item was deleted at this date, but the item will still be there.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
But with us, it's actually gone. Like, and we remove the audio file, and we like it's not like nothing. Can you talk a little bit about like, because the one point, if we follow the tape itself, like the audio file or the video file that you upload.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah.
So like how is that process, and how do we ensure that there aren't like any red threads that keep being tied, or like how do we clean up after ourselves?
All right. Let's make up the case here. I'm Ymir in Iceland, and I upload an audio file to GoodTape to be transcribed. The audio file will go from Iceland to France, where our Scaleway servers are. Shout out to Scaleway. They're a European sovereign cloud provider. That's where we sort of receive the file. It goes into a service we call Tape Vault, where it's stored, the file itself, and then we make a record of that upload having happened. And of course, that you did it, so that we can know that you have that specific file. After that, the file is kept in France still, and then we have other servers in Amsterdam with Google, where we're running TPU, so we might be touch more upon that at a later point.
Yeah.
But in those servers, we can't remember if it's Amsterdam or it's around Amsterdam. It's not exactly Amsterdam, so I'm not going to say Amsterdam.
Okay.
Amsterdam area of Holland, the Netherlands, and that's where the file gets temporarily downloaded to be transcribed. And as soon as it's done transcribing, it's deleted from there, and the transcription is sent onwards. So like there's this exchange of like there's only one place where the file is actually stored, and every other place it's only temporarily, right, sort of borrowed, you could say, just to do the very specific job that it has to be done at that place. That could be transcribing, or doing the speaker labels, and then it's sent back, or like then it's deleted from there and only kept in our tape vault, as we like to call it.
Yeah. So the tape vault, like, it produces these temporary URLs, or like temporary links to the audio of whatever because there is like tape vault does store it, but it also ensures that if you upload like a video or however you upload anything, it will convert and only like take the audio part of that thing.
True, yeah.
And then
Exactly.
we will save it in the best, like both environmentally friendly, but also like transportation friendly format.
Yeah.
That and then like which is an opus file. And the it's the link to that opus file, and that link will expire after a set amount of time. So if any bad actors were to intercept that traffic at any point in time,
yeah, they would only get a temporary link that would probably have expired at that point,
Yes.
where they actually try and use it.
yeah,
Like there's one truth, which is the audio file, and everything else is temporary, borrowed, and only for a very specific use, right?
yeah. So you
Yeah.
if you get a link to download it, you will not be able to upload something.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
Like, so that link has just only one purpose.
It has a time and it has a role.
Yeah,
You can do this within this time frame with it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a cool feature of Tapevault.
And it really took a while. That's why like good tape existed for like a year at least before we had any audio playback.
Yeah.
Because we really wanted to nail.
Crack this nut.
Yeah.
basically.
So to both figure out how to store it, like what to store, but also like how to share it between like all of the platforms.
Yeah.
And also something that's really cool, I feel, is the all of our transcription machines. I feel like they're so temporary in nature.
Yeah. Everything is essentially temporary in its nature in the way we've structured it. It's sort of, there's often the most secure thing you can do is to acknowledge that everything should be temporary and sort of work around that constraint. That you're never storing anything at a hard disk that exists for more than a day or two, right? At most. That's also where Kubernetes comes in, like such a clutch, because it is essentially based around this sort of stateless nature of things. And it sort of forces this thought of thinking really hard about what is state and where do you want to keep state. You can think of state as like information or any sort of persistent information. And then everything that is not stateful is stateless and sort of temporary, and you can expect it to shut down at any time and a new one to boot up, or however that is. That's also like, that probably also brings us on to like talk a bit about TPUs, or
yeah, I mean, so normally a lot of AI we are talking about, like we hear NVIDIA, and when we think NVIDIA, do we think graphics cards, which means GPUs.
I had a gaming console, it had a great NVIDIA GPU on it.
Yes, exactly, graphics processing unit. Like the
we made a switch recently, and we're sort of in the process now of fully merging that shift over to TPUs, which are tensor processing units.
What is a tensor?
Tensor. A tensor is, should I go? No. Look up what a tensor is, but it's essentially accelerators, like hardware accelerators, you would call them, that specialize in the sort of calculations that AI models or AI runs on, basically. That would be the sort of most general way to say it. It's like if you were to make, let's think about how computers were made back in the days. Like you had a calculator that just had to have exactly the chips to add and subtract and magnify, multiply numbers, magnify them.
I mean, they are magnified. It's not.
And
the values are magnified.
And then this sort of concept of a computer, like a personal computer that had to sort of do it all, came along. And that movement has, of course, brought us laptops and sort of very general use computers. But now we're also starting to go back into sort of the beauty of actually having specified or like hardware that has a very specific purpose. We saw it with GPUs, that their only job is to calculate vectors and do some ray tracing, exactly. Do those sort of calculations. And then they try to apply that sort of piece of hardware to do AI, which sort of works. And it's happening all over the world, but it's still made for a very specific purpose and it's being repurposed. And instead they looked at what they were trying to do and figured, well, why don't we design a hardware that does exactly that and nothing else?
Yeah.
Which is sort of what TPUs are.
And we're seeing some crazy both so one thing you could think about with GPUs is the fact that if you were to talk about another case that GPUs are used for, which is Bitcoin mining.
Oh yeah.
And if you think Bitcoin mining and environment, you don't think woohoo.
No.
Right? So there's a direct correlation between how effective GPUs are, and you can maybe talk a bit more about that, and how the difference between just the speed of the work that has been done on the TPU versus the GPU.
Oh, exactly.
Like, so how long on a GPU? How long would like an hour of transcription take?
On a very efficient pipeline, as we still have on the GPUs, like an hour would run in, what, 8 minutes?
Yeah.
8 to 10 minutes. And then now on TPUs, we can get an hour through as fast as 1 minute, 1.5 minutes probably. Last benchmark I did. It's interesting because why would our users care about what sort of hardware we're using to do their transcriptions? I mean, I just want my transcriptions. At the end of the day, the quicker it is, the cheaper we can offer our services.
Yeah.
And that's of course that's a big thing. We want to make transcriptions universal for people in like all countries with different economies. I mean, that's sort of a thing that comes with being for journalists. We want to be for all journalists.
Yeah.
But then it's also a matter of speed. Obviously, we can get faster results. We can get faster transcriptions.
Yeah.
But there's also the sort of aspect of that this movement we're seeing with all of this hardware, with all of this electricity essentially that is running to do all the complex processing that this new wave of AI is bringing with it, is also very costly for the environment.
Yeah.
And there is something also about having to live up to that responsibility as a developer, infrastructure provisioner, of sort of trying to run with the least electricity as possible when you're doing it at this scale that Gudheim has now come to run at.
Yeah, and it's just like looking at where we were like a year ago until now, and then maybe like in 2 years, the crazy amount of like compute power that we would need as just like a small little company.
Yeah.
Like if we could help things drive forward so that we could like just take some of that workload towards more effective or like specialized hardware, like that would be huge.
That's a world of a difference.
Yeah.
And I hope we get to see this discussion both about where is your data processed, but also on what hardware is it processed on. Like these things are becoming more. I think this is the sort of second wave of AI discussions. It's not just what can AI do, but what is it also? What is it costing? What does it mean for sort of a larger ecosystem?
Yeah.
Of things, both in terms of sovereignty and in terms of environment.
Yeah. So we're really hoping for other companies other than Google to start also experimenting with making their own tensor processing units and stuff like that, so that we're not forced by popularity to choose a US-based company. Like it would be really great to see that democratization happening in the hardware or tech space.
Yeah. A footnote: all our servers are in Europe. It's just you can't really use this hardware without sort of going somewhere with a company that is at some point in the chain US owned, right?
Yeah.
Even though you can keep all your servers within Europe like we do.